My son-in-law looked me dead in the eye and told me I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving because his parents didn't want to share their holiday with the help. I smiled, nodded, and walked away. 3 weeks later, I stood at the front of our company's annual gala while his boss introduced me as the founder and owner of the corporation he'd been working for all along. What happened next changed everything. You need to hear this. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The words hung in the air of their Scottsdale living room like smoke after a fire. Rachel stood frozen by the kitchen island, her hands still wet from washing dishes. Emma and Lucas had just run upstairs to play, their laughter echoing down the hallway, blissfully unaware that their grandfather was being uninvited from Thanksgiving dinner. Derek adjusted his golf club grip, practicing his swing in front of their floor-to-ceiling windows. He didn't even have the decency to look at me when he delivered the news. "My parents are flying in from Connecticut for the holiday, Frank. They've got certain expectations about who they share their table with. I'm sure you understand." I set down the coffee mug Rachel had poured for me 20 minutes earlier, back when this had still been a normal Sunday visit with my daughter and grandkids. The ceramic felt cold now against my palm. "I don't think I do understand, Derek. Maybe you could explain it to me." He finally turned around, his expression somewhere between impatience and pity. "Look, no offense, but they're very particular about social dynamics. My father was a federal judge. My mother sits on the board of 3 charities. They're used to dinner conversation about current events, political theory, cultural issues, intellectual topics." The implications settled over me like a wet blanket. I'd raised Rachel by myself after Maggie died when she was 16, put her through Arizona State, watched her graduate with honors in accounting, walked her down the aisle 4 years ago to this man who apparently thought my blue collars showed through my Sunday clothes. And what exactly do you think I'd contribute to the conversation, Derek? He had the audacity to shrug. "I mean, what do you want me to say? You mop floors for a living. My parents don't really connect with that lifestyle. It's nothing personal, just different worlds." Rachel finally found her voice. "Derek, that's my father you're talking about. And I respect that, babe." He set down his golf club and walked over to kiss her forehead. "But we need to think about the impression we make. Your dad's a great guy, but he's not exactly the type of person who fits with my family's social circle." He turned back to me with what he probably thought was a kind smile. "You get it, right? It's just easier this way." I stood up slowly. My knees creaked a little. 68 years of living does that to a man. 35 of those years spent building something from nothing, but Derek didn't know that. He saw the worn Carhartt jacket I wore on weekends, the Toyota Camry I'd driven for 15 years, the calluses on my hands from the manual work I still did occasionally, not because I had to, but because I never wanted to forget where I came from. "Where will I spend Thanksgiving then?" Derek waved his hand dismissively. "Aren't there other janitors at your work? Maybe you could do something with them. Or there's always the senior center. I hear they do a nice community meal." The senior center. Like I was some charity case who needed a free turkey dinner because I couldn't afford my own. I'd paid off my house in Glendale 20 years ago. The same house where Maggie and I had brought Rachel home from the hospital. The same house where we'd hosted every holiday until cancer took my wife 4 years back. Rachel's eyes were filling with tears. "Dad, maybe we can do something the weekend after. Just us and the kids." The weekend after. I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd raised to be strong and principled, now reduced to negotiating scraps of family time around her husband's social climbing. When had this happened? When had Derek's condescension become something she tolerated instead of challenged? I picked up my jacket from the back of their designer couch, the one that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Their whole house was like that. Marble countertops, hardwood imported from Brazil, a wine fridge that held bottles worth more than my monthly grocery bill. I'd been happy for them when they bought it 3 years ago, proud that my daughter had married someone successful. Now I saw it differently. The address in Silverstone Ranch wasn't just about a nice neighborhood. It was about status, about being the kind of people who didn't associate with janitors, even when that janitor was family. "Son," I said, and Derek actually flinched at the word. He'd asked me once not to call him that, said it felt too informal for someone of his professional standing. I thought he was joking. "Tell your parents I hope they enjoy their Thanksgiving. I'm sure the conversation will be very intellectual without me there to lower the tone." Derek's face reddened. "There's no need to be dramatic about this, Frank. We're just trying to maintain certain standards." Standards? I let the words sit there for a moment. My father-in-law worked in a steel mill his whole life. Maggie's mother cleaned houses. They raised 6 kids on wages that would make Derek's starting salary look like luxury. They never missed a family holiday, never thought twice about who was worthy of sharing their table. I understand completely, Derek. More than you know. Rachel followed me to the door. "Dad, please, let me talk to him. We can figure something out." I kissed her forehead, the same way I'd done every night when she was little, checking for fevers, reassuring her after nightmares, promising her the world would be kind if she was kind to it first. "Honey, you don't need to fix this. This is between Derek and his conscience, assuming he can find it somewhere between his ego and his ambition. That's not fair. He's under a lot of pressure at work right now. His parents have high expectations." I opened the door and stepped into the Phoenix sunshine. November in Arizona meant perfect weather, 75 degrees and clear skies, the kind of day that made you grateful to be alive, even when your son-in-law just told you that you weren't good enough to eat turkey with his family. "Rachel, baby, I've been under pressure my whole life. Built a business from scratch, raised you alone after your mother died, worked double shifts to pay for your college so you didn't drown in debt. Not once did I think that pressure gave me permission to treat people like they were less than human." She opened her mouth to respond, but I was already walking toward my truck. Behind me, I heard Derek's voice carrying through the open door. "Is he always this sensitive? Jesus, Rachel. I told you this would be a problem." I drove home through North Phoenix, past the industrial parks and office complexes that had sprouted up over the decades. Wilson Industrial Solutions handled facility management for everything from hospitals to corporate headquarters. 200 employees across the state, $50 million in annual revenue. And somewhere in one of those buildings, my son-in-law went to work every single day, never knowing that the janitor he sneered at in the break room, the old man he'd seen mopping floors during his late nights at the office, was the same person who signed his paychecks. I'd started working nights again 6 months ago, not because I needed the money, but because Tom Rodriguez, my CFO and oldest friend, had convinced me it was good to stay connected to the ground level. See what our people deal with every day. Remember why we started this thing in the first place. Last Tuesday, I'd been buffing the floors on the 6th floor of the North Point Tower, our biggest account. Derek had walked right past me on his way to the elevator, designer shoes clicking against the tile I'd just finished cleaning. He'd been on his phone, laughing with someone about the pathetic old guy who still did manual labor at his age, never made eye contact, never said thank you. He had no idea. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Rachel's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. The 4th time, I answered. "Dad, please come back. Derek wants to apologize." "Does Derek want to apologize, or did you tell him he needs to?" Silence, then a sigh. "Does it matter? Can't we just move past this?" I sat in my truck, looking at the house Maggie and I had bought when Reagan was president. The house that had seemed so big when it was just the 2 of us, then perfect when Rachel arrived, then too empty after Maggie left. The house I'd kept exactly as it was because changing it felt like erasing her memory. "Rachel, honey, I need you to understand something.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
This isn't about Thanksgiving dinner. This is about respect. Your husband thinks I'm beneath him because I work with my hands. He thinks his parents are too good to share a meal with someone who cleans buildings for a living. And you're asking me to pretend that's acceptable because it's easier than standing up to him? He's my husband, Dad, and I'm your father. But apparently one of those relationships requires me to accept being treated like garbage while the other one gets to set the terms. She started crying then. Real tears, not the polite ones she'd held back in their living room. I don't know what to do. He wasn't like this when we met. Or maybe he was and I didn't see it. You saw it, baby. You just loved him anyway. And that's okay. But love doesn't mean accepting disrespect. Not for you, and definitely not for me. I ended the call and walked inside. The house felt different today. Smaller, somehow. Like I'd been seeing it through Derek's eyes instead of my own. The furniture I'd had for decades suddenly looked shabby instead of comfortable. The family photos on the walls seemed quaint instead of precious. Then I looked closer at those photos. Maggie and me on our wedding day. Both of us so young we looked like kids playing dress-up. Rachel as a baby, then a toddler, then graduating high school. The three of us at the Grand Canyon, at Disneyland, at her college graduation. Every single moment paid for with honest work and careful saving. There was nothing shabby about that, nothing to be ashamed of. I walked to my desk and pulled out the file I kept in the bottom drawer. Employee records for Wilson Industrial Solutions. 243 people currently on payroll. I flipped through until I found what I was looking for. Derek Allen Parker. Senior Marketing Manager, hired 3 years ago. Salary $95,000 annually, plus benefits and performance bonuses. Emergency contact listed as Rachel Wilson Parker. I'd never made the connection before. My daughter kept her maiden name at work, used her married name socially. I signed off on senior hires but left the details to HR. The company had grown too big for me to know everyone personally anymore. But I knew Derek now, knew exactly who he was and what he thought of people like me. I closed the file and returned it to the drawer. Then I pulled out my phone and called Tom. He answered on the second ring. Frank, what's wrong? You sound like someone died. Not yet, I said, but I need you to do something for me. That company holiday party we're planning for December, I want to move it up, make it the weekend before Thanksgiving. Tom was quiet for a moment. That's 2 weeks away, Frank. We've already sent invitations for the December date. Send new ones. Tell everyone it's mandatory for management level and above. Black tie event. I want it done right. What's going on? I smiled, though there wasn't much humor in it. Let's just say I'm about to teach someone a lesson about assumptions. And Tom, make sure Derek Parker from marketing gets a personal invitation. Tell him his attendance is specifically requested by senior leadership. Tom knew me well enough not to ask more questions. I'll take care of it. But Frank, whatever you're planning, make sure it's worth it. I looked around my modest living room at the life I'd built through honest work and sacrifice, at the home where I'd raised a daughter to believe that character mattered more than status, even if she'd temporarily forgotten that lesson. It'll be worth it, I promised. Trust me on that. The invitations went out the next morning. Elegant cardstock with embossed lettering, delivered by courier to every manager and director in the company. Tom had outdone himself with the wording. Wilson Industrial Solutions cordially invite you to our annual Leadership Recognition Gala. Black tie required. The Phoenician Resort, November 15th. Your presence is specifically requested as we celebrate 35 years of excellence and honor those who have contributed to our success. I was sitting in my home office when Tom called back that afternoon. The RSVPs are already rolling in. Everyone's coming. He paused. Including your son-in-law. His assistant confirmed this morning. Good. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the framed photo on my desk. Maggie and me at the groundbreaking for our first real office 28 years ago. She'd been so proud that day, even though we were still scraping by, still wondering if this gamble would pay off. She'd believed in me when I was just a guy with a mop and a dream. "Frank," Tom said carefully, "are you going to tell me what this is really about?" I picked up the photo, traced my finger along Maggie's smile. "You remember what I told you I wanted to work nights again? That it would keep me grounded?" I remember thinking you were crazy, but sure, that's what I said. You were right. It did keep me grounded. Showed me exactly who we're employing. Showed me how some people treat the workers they think are beneath them. Tom was quiet for a long moment. "This is more than business, isn't it? My daughter married a man who thinks I'm not good enough to sit at his table, Tom. A man who walks past our night crew like they're furniture. A man who has no idea that the old janitor he ignores in the hallway is the reason he has a career at all." Jesus, Frank, Derek Parker is your son-in-law? And he has no clue who I am. Rachel never connected the dots for him. Why would she? I'm just her dad who cleans buildings. He probably never even asked what company I worked for. What are you going to do? I set the photo back on my desk. I'm going to give him exactly what he wants. A room full of important people, intellectual conversation, the chance to make an impression on senior leadership. And then I'm going to show him what happens when you judge people by their job title instead of their character.
I've had people assume I'm the secretary when I walk into meetings where I'm actually running the show. So yeah, I've been invisible plenty of times. How do you handle it? I let them underestimate me. Then I let my work speak louder than their assumptions. She tilted her head. But something tells me you're planning a more direct approach. I handed her the guest list. Derek Parker, marketing. Do you know him? She scanned the names, stopped at his. I've seen him around. Decent work, good presentations. A little too impressed with himself, but that's half the guys in marketing. Why? He's my son-in-law, and he doesn't know I own the company. Patricia's eyebrows rose. How is that possible? I shrugged. I keep a low profile. Rachel uses her maiden name at work, married name everywhere else. We have 200 employees. Not everyone connects Francis J. Wilson on the letterhead with Frank, the guy who still mops floors sometimes. You're kidding. She leaned forward. Derek Parker married your daughter and never figured out who you are? He figured out I'm a janitor. That's all he needed to know. I met her gaze. 3 weeks ago, he told me I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving because his parents don't share meals with the help. The silence that followed was heavy. Patricia's expression shifted from surprise to something harder, angrier. Please tell me you're about to destroy this man. I'm about to educate him. There's a difference. She sat back, crossing her arms. Frank, in all the years I've known you, you've never been vindictive. You're the guy who gave second chances to employees everyone else wanted to fire. You're the one who started the scholarship program for workers' kids. You don't do revenge. This isn't revenge, Patricia. It's accountability. Derek has spent 3 years walking past our night crew like they're invisible, talking down to people because he thinks his MBA makes him superior. And now he's teaching my grandchildren that some people aren't worthy of basic respect. I can't let that continue. What's the plan? The gala. He thinks he's attending a networking event, a chance to impress senior leadership, maybe position himself for a promotion. Instead, he's going to learn that leadership isn't about titles or degrees. It's about character. And you're going to teach him this lesson in front of everyone? I'm going to let him teach himself. All I'm doing is creating the conditions for truth. Patricia studied me for a long moment. You know this could backfire. Rachel might not forgive you. The thought had kept me up for 3 nights straight. My daughter, the little girl I'd raised alone, who I'd protected from every hurt I could shield her from. What would it do to her when she realized I'd planned this? When she understood that I'd known exactly what was coming and let it happen anyway? But then I thought about Emma and Lucas, my grandchildren, growing up in a house where their grandfather wasn't good enough, learning from Derek that people who work with their hands deserve contempt, absorbing the message that money and status matter more than integrity. If I let this slide, I'm teaching them the same lesson. I looked at Patricia. Sometimes protecting someone means letting them face uncomfortable truths. Rachel needs to see who she married, really see it, not just hear about it from me. The week before the gala, I did something I hadn't done in 4 years. I went to the cemetery where Maggie was buried. The grass was neatly trimmed, the headstone clean. Margaret Ann Wilson, beloved wife and mother. The dates that bracketed a life too short, a love too deep to ever really end. I sat down on the ground next to her, ignoring the dampness seeping through my jeans. "Hey, Mags." I could almost hear her voice, telling me I was too old to be sitting on wet grass, that I'd catch cold, that I needed to take better care of myself. Our daughter married someone who thinks I'm not good enough to share their table. The words came out harder than I expected. He looks at me and sees nothing but a janitor. Doesn't even see me, really. I'm just background scenery in his successful life. The wind rustled through the trees surrounding the cemetery. November in Phoenix meant cooler temperatures, the relief after months of brutal heat. Maggie had loved this time of year, said it was when the city finally woke up and remembered how to breathe. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing here. Part of me wants to just let it go. Keep the peace. Be the bigger person. But then I think about what you'd say if you were here. She would have had opinions. Strong ones. Maggie had never tolerated disrespect, not of herself, and certainly not of the people she loved. When Rachel was 12, a teacher made a snide comment about kids from single-parent homes. Maggie had marched into that school and delivered a speech about dignity and assumptions that became legendary in the PTA. The teacher apologized. Publicly. You'd tell me to stand up, not for revenge, but because people need to understand consequences. I traced my fingers over her name carved in granite. So, that's what I'm doing. I'm standing up. A crow landed on a nearby headstone, regarding me with intelligent black eyes. Maggie had always said crows were good omens, messengers between worlds. I'd never believed in that kind of thing, but sitting there in the cooling afternoon, I wanted to. I'm scared I'm going to lose her over this. Rachel's caught between us, and I'm about to make it so much worse. What kind of father does that? But then I knew the answer. The kind of father who loved his daughter enough to show her the truth even when the truth was painful. The kind who refused to teach his grandchildren that dignity was negotiable based on someone's tax bracket. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting. Getting old was a series of small indignities, each one a reminder that time moved in only one direction. Wish me luck, Mags. I'm either about to do something brilliant or something I'll regret for the rest of my life. The crow took flight, its wings cutting through the golden afternoon light. I chose to take it as approval. Back home, I pulled out the suit I'd bought for Rachel's wedding. 4 years old, but still in good shape. I'd had it dry cleaned after the ceremony and hung it in the back of my closet, figuring I'd need it again someday for another family milestone. I hadn't imagined it would be for this. Tom called that evening with final numbers. We've got 93 confirmed attendees. The Phoenician is ready. Patricia worked with their events team on the program. Everything's set. And Derek? His RSVP came with a note asking if spouses were included. Tom's voice carried a hint of amusement. I told him it was leadership only, professional development event. Good. Rachel doesn't need to see this firsthand. Frank, you sure about this? There's still time to cancel. Make it a regular recognition dinner. Let this whole thing blow over. I thought about Derek's face when he told me I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving. The casual dismissal, like my feelings were as irrelevant as my occupation. The way he'd turned back to his golf club, already moving on to more important matters. I'm sure. See you Friday night. Derek's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal searching for escape. Sweat had soaked through his collar despite the climate control. His mouth opened and closed twice before any sound emerged. I'll stay. The words came out hoarse, barely audible even with the microphone. I'll do the night shift. I nodded slowly, letting him feel the weight of that choice. Starting Monday, you'll report to Sarah Okonkwo at 10 p.m. She'll be your supervisor. You'll follow her instructions exactly.
You'll learn every aspect of what our night crew does. And Derek, if I hear even one complaint about attitude or effort, you're done. Not just with the night program, with this company entirely." He nodded rapidly, desperately. "Yes, sir, I understand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me yet." I gestured toward the audience. "Apologize to every person in this room who's had to work with you while you look down on anyone who didn't have an MBA. Apologize to Sarah and her team who you've ignored for 3 years. Then go home and apologize to your wife for making her choose between her husband and her father."
The room remained silent as Derek turned to face the crowd. His face had gone from pale to splotchy red, tears tracking down his cheeks. "I'm sorry," he managed, "to all of you. I've been terrible, arrogant, blind. I'm so sorry." It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't particularly convincing, but it was a start. "You can sit down now," I said quietly. "We have more program to get through." Derek practically fled the stage, returning to his seat where he sat hunched over, his head in his hands. Janet from HR had moved her chair slightly away from him. Message received, loud and clear. I took a breath and addressed the room again. "Now, let's talk about what we're really here to celebrate. 35 years ago, I started this company because I believed that the work we do matters. Not just for profit margins or quarterly reports, but because clean spaces create dignity. Because maintenance creates safety. Because the people who do this work deserve to be valued, not overlooked." Sarah stood again. "Can I say something?" I gestured for her to join me on stage. She walked up with the confident stride of someone who'd earned every step forward in her career. "Mr. Wilson gave me a chance when I had nothing," she said into the microphone. "I was a single mother with a GED, cleaning offices because it was the only job I could get that let me be home during the day for my kids. Most companies would have kept me in that position forever, but Frank saw something in me, pushed me to take classes, promoted me when I showed I could lead. Now I manage 30 people, and my daughter just started college." Her voice cracked slightly on that last part. "Because Frank Wilson doesn't just talk about dignity, he builds it into how this company operates. And if you work here and you haven't figured that out yet, tonight's your wake-up call." The applause that followed was thunderous. Sarah returned to her seat, and I noticed several people shaking her hand as she passed. The rest of the evening proceeded according to the original plan. Patricia presented recognition awards to outstanding team members. Tom announced our revenue growth and expansion plans. There was dinner, a band, dancing, all the trappings of a successful corporate event. But Derek never moved from his chair. He sat there like a ghost at his own funeral, while people carefully avoided making eye contact with him. The social isolation was complete and immediate. By the time dessert arrived, 3 people had gotten up and moved to different tables when they realized they'd been seated near him. I watched it all from the head table, feeling something complicated twist in my chest. This was what I'd wanted. Derek exposed, his arrogance stripped away in front of his colleagues. Justice served publicly and completely. So why did it feel hollow? Tom leaned over during coffee service. "You okay?" "I don't know." I stirred cream into my cup without really seeing it. I wanted him to understand, to feel what he made me feel. But now I'm just watching a man's life fall apart in real time. "He made his choices, Frank. You gave him an out. He could have resigned with dignity. Instead, he chose accountability." "Did he? Or did he choose the option where he doesn't have to tell Rachel he lost his job?" Tom had no answer for that. At 9 p.m., the event began winding down. Managers collected their coats, said their goodbyes, headed back to their lives. Derek remained in his chair until the ballroom had almost emptied. Then he stood slowly and walked toward me. Up close, he looked gutted.
His tuxedo was wrinkled, his eyes red and swollen. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Does Rachel know about tonight?" I shook my head. "She knows there was a gala. She doesn't know what happened here." He nodded, processing. "When are you going to tell her?" "I'm not. You are." His eyes widened. "Frank, please. If I tell her this, she'll know the truth about who you married. Better she hears it from you than from someone else. This company has 93 managers who are here tonight. How long do you think before someone mentions it at a networking event? Before it becomes industry gossip?" Derek's shoulders slumped. "What do I even say?" "You start with the truth. That you've been cruel to people you considered beneath you. That you excluded your own father-in-law from family holidays because of pride and prejudice. That you're facing consequences for treating human beings like they're invisible." "And then what? After I've destroyed my marriage and she leaves me?" I looked at this man who'd married my daughter, who played with my grandchildren, who'd hurt me in ways he was only beginning to understand. "Maybe she will leave you. That's her choice to make. Or maybe she'll see that you're finally being honest about who you've been and who you want to become. Either way, Derek, you owe her the truth." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I really am sorry, Frank. Not just because I got caught, because I was wrong. About you, about the work you do, and about what matters." "We'll see if that's true. Words are easy. Showing up at 10 p.m. Monday and working an 8-hour shift scrubbing floors, that's when we find out if you mean it." "I'll be there." He straightened slightly. "I promise I'll be there." After he left, Patricia joined me on the now empty dance floor. The band had packed up, the catering staff was clearing tables. The Phoenician would return to its normal luxury by morning, all evidence of tonight's drama swept away like spilled champagne. "That was intense. How are you feeling?" "Like I just burned down a bridge I might regret destroying." She considered that. "You know what I think? I think you did something really hard because it needed to be done. Derek needed that wake-up call. Maybe Rachel needs it too. And those 93 people in that room tonight, they saw their CEO stand up for the workers everyone else ignores. That matters. Does it matter enough to justify hurting my daughter?" Patricia put her hand on my arm. "Your daughter is hurting already. She's been hurting every time Derek made her choose between him and you, every time he talked down about the father who raised her, every time she had to pretend his behavior was acceptable. You didn't create that hurt, you just stopped letting it stay hidden." The drive home was quiet. Tom offered to stay with me, worried I shouldn't be alone. I sent him home to his wife. Some things you had to sit with by yourself. My house felt different when I walked in. Not empty exactly, more like it was waiting, holding its breath for whatever came next. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon and sat in Maggie's chair, the one she'd claimed as hers in our early years. The cushions had long since molded to her shape, and sitting there always felt like receiving a hug from memory. Did I do the right thing? I asked the empty room. The photos on the mantel didn't answer. Maggie smiled out from a dozen frozen moments, forever 46, forever healthy, forever convinced that I could handle whatever life threw at us. My phone rang at 11:30. Rachel's name on the screen hit me like a punch. I answered. "Hey, honey. Dad." Her voice was tight, controlled, the kind of control that came right before breaking. "Derek just told me everything. About the gala. About what you did." I closed my eyes. "Rachel, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you humiliated my husband in front of his entire company? Why you didn't tell me any of this was happening? Why you chose public revenge over talking to me like an adult?" The anger in her voice was expected. The pain beneath it cut deeper than I had anticipated. "Your husband excluded me from Thanksgiving because he's ashamed of what I do for a living. He spent 3 years treating our night crew like they're invisible. He needed to understand that actions have consequences." So you ambushed him, exposed him in front of everyone he works with? Dad, do you have any idea what this does to our life? To his career? People are already texting about it. By Monday, it'll be all over Phoenix business circles. Good. Maybe other people who treat service workers like garbage will think twice. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You're not some crusader for social justice, Dad.
You're a father who just destroyed his son-in-law's reputation because he hurt your feelings. That landed hard because it wasn't entirely wrong. Was this about justice or was it about revenge? Had I acted from principle or from wounded pride? The line between them suddenly seemed thin and blurry. Rachel, I said slowly, Derek told you I wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving. Did he tell you why? Did he tell you what he said about your mother, about how she knew her place better than I know mine? Silence on the other end, long enough that I thought she might have hung up. He said that? He said that and worse? Called me the help? Suggested I spend the holiday at a senior center with other janitors, made it clear that his parents were too good to share a table with someone who mops floors. Her breath caught. I didn't know. He told me it was about space, about his parents wanting a quiet family dinner. He lied to you, baby, and you believed him because it was easier than confronting what he really thinks about people like me, like your mother, like everyone who works with their hands instead of sitting in an office. Another long silence. Then, very quietly, I should have asked more questions. I should have pushed back harder. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't. I let it go. You did, and I understand why. You love him. You wanted to believe the best. But Rachel, love doesn't mean accepting disrespect, not of yourself and not of the people who came before you. I know. She was crying now, making no effort to hide it. I know, Dad. I don't know what to do now. How do I stay married to someone who thinks like that? How do I look at him and not see the man who excluded my father from our family? That's not a question I can answer for you. You have to figure out if Derek means what he says about changing, if he's capable of becoming someone different than who he's been. And what about us? Her voice cracked completely. What about you and me? That's easier. I'm your father. I've loved you since the day you were born, and I'll love you until the day I die. Nothing Derek did or will do changes that. Even though I chose him over you, you didn't choose him over me, honey. You chose to give him the benefit of the doubt. That's what love does. It hopes for the best, even when the evidence points another direction. She cried harder, those deep sobs that come from somewhere primal. I miss Mom. She'd know what to say right now. Your mother would tell you to stand up straight and face the truth head on. She'd tell you that you're strong enough to handle whatever comes next, and she'd remind you that dignity isn't negotiable, no matter how much you love someone. Rachel laughed through her tears. She really would say that. Every word of it. Probably louder and with more swearing. We sat on the line together, not speaking, just breathing. Father and daughter connected by silence and history and love that was complicated but unbreakable. Derek starts night shift on Monday, I said finally, working with Sarah's crew. If he shows up and does the work without complaint, maybe there's hope. If he quits or half-asses it, then you'll know who he really is. And if he does it, if he actually changes, then maybe you'll have a marriage worth saving. But Rachel, that's his job to prove, not yours to fix. You can't change him. Only he can do that. Okay, she sniffled. Okay, Dad. I love you, baby. I love you too. After we hung up, I sat in Maggie's chair until the bourbon was gone and the house had settled into deep night silence. Tomorrow, the consequences would continue to unfold. Derek would have to face his choice. Rachel would have to decide what she could live with, and I would have to accept that sometimes doing the right thing still hurt everyone involved. But tonight, I'd told the truth.
stood up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves, refused to let cruelty and prejudice hide behind politeness and social norms. Maggie would have approved. That would have to be enough. Monday night arrived cold and clear, the kind of November evening that reminded Phoenix residents why they tolerated the brutal summers. I pulled into the parking lot of our North Point Tower contract at 9:45, 15 minutes before Derek's shift was scheduled to begin. The building rose 23 stories above the desert floor, glass and steel reflecting the city lights below. Sarah's van was already there, along with 3 other vehicles belonging to her crew. I'd called her over the weekend to explain the situation. She'd listened without interrupting, then asked a single question. Is he going to be a problem for my team? That depends entirely on him, I answered honestly. If he causes issues, pull him off the floor and call me directly. Now I sat in my truck watching the entrance, wondering if Derek would actually show. It was one thing to make promises under pressure in a ballroom full of witnesses. Following through at 10 o'clock on a Monday night when you could just as easily send a resignation email was something else entirely. At 9:53, a silver Audi pulled into the lot, Derek's car. He sat there for a moment, engine running, and I could see him gripping the steering wheel, making the final calculation. Stay or go. Face it or run. The engine cut off. He climbed out wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt, work boots that looked brand new. His movements were stiff, reluctant, but he was here. That counted for something. I waited until he'd gone inside before following. The lobby was quiet this time of night, just a security guard at the desk who nodded at me. Elevators hummed softly in their shafts. Somewhere above, the city's machinery of commerce slept, while people like Sarah's crew made it sure it would wake up clean. The night crew gathered on the 3rd floor in a supply room that doubled as their break area. Sarah was standing at the center going over assignments while her team listened. Derek stood apart from the group, his body language screaming discomfort. I stayed in the hallway where they couldn't see me, just observing. "All right," Sarah was saying. "Marcus, you've got floors 6 through 9. Keisha takes 10 through 14. James handles 15 through 18. She paused, looking at Derek. "And you're with me tonight, floors 3 through 5. We start at the top and work down." Derek nodded. "What do I do?" Sarah handed him a rolling cart loaded with supplies. "You push this. Follow me. Watch what I do, then you'll do it yourself. Questions get asked before we start a task, not during. Safety protocols are non-negotiable. If I tell you to stop, you stop immediately. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "Don't ma'am me. Sarah works fine." The crew dispersed to their assignments. Sarah headed for the elevator with Derek trailing behind, struggling slightly with the cart. I took the stairs, climbing to the 5th floor where I knew they'd begin. The fluorescent lights up there had been dimmed to energy-saving mode, casting everything in a pale glow. Sarah propped open the stairwell door and started pulling supplies from the cart. Spray bottles, microfiber cloths, a vacuum, trash bags, floor cleaner. We start with trash collection. Every office, every cubicle, every conference room. Bags get tied off and taken to the service elevator. Then we dust surfaces, wipe down desks, clean glass, vacuum floors. Bathrooms are last because they require different products and protocols. Derek watched her demonstrate the efficient movements of someone who'd done this thousands of times. The economical way she moved through space, wasting no motion. The systematic approach that ensured nothing got missed. "Your turn," she said, gesturing to a row of cubicles. "Show me trash collection." He grabbed a trash bag and started moving through the spaces. Too slow, too uncertain, checking each bin multiple times as if trash might contain hidden treasures. Sarah watched without comment for 10 minutes, then called him back. "You're thinking too much. Trash is trash. Grab the bin liner, tie it off, new bag in, move on. We've got 40 offices on this floor and 2 more after that. At your current pace, we'll be here till dawn." Derek nodded and tried again, faster this time, but I could see the strain in his movements. This wasn't the kind of work his body was used to.
Marketing managers spent their days in chairs, their biggest physical effort walking to meetings. Manual labor used different muscles, required different endurance. By the time they'd cleared the 5th floor, Derek was sweating. His new boots were already raising blisters.
Sarah sent him to refill cleaning solution while she started on the fourth floor alone, giving him a break disguised as a task. I followed him to the supply closet. He didn't notice me at first, too focused on reading the dilution instructions on the industrial cleaner bottle. His hands shook slightly as he measured. "Label says 2 ounces per gallon," I said from the doorway. He spun around, nearly dropping the bottle. "Frank, I didn't know you were here. I come by most Monday nights. Check on things. Make sure the crew has what they needs." I leaned against the door frame. "How's it going so far?" He set down the bottle carefully. "It's harder than I thought. I mean, I knew it would be work, but I didn't realize how much. Most people don't. That's the problem." Derek filled the spray bottle, his movements slow and deliberate. "I keep thinking about all the times I walked past these floors in the morning. Everything perfect and clean. I never once thought about who made it that way or when it happened. And now I can't stop thinking about it." He looked at me directly. "Every office I've ever worked in, someone did this. Emptied my trash, cleaned my coffee spills, made my workspace livable. And I never said thank you. Not once." The realization seemed to be settling into his bones, along with the fatigue. Good. That's the beginning of understanding. Sarah appeared in the doorway. "You planning to join us again, or should I finish the shift solo?" Derek grabbed the filled bottles. "Sorry, I'm coming." They disappeared down the hallway, Sarah's efficient stride contrasting with Derek's slower, painful steps. I took the elevator down to the 3rd floor and found a spot in an empty conference room where I could watch them work through the glass walls. Sarah taught him the proper way to clean a bathroom, the order of operations that prevented cross-contamination, the difference between disinfecting and sanitizing, the importance of ventilation when working with chemicals. Derek listened intently, taking mental notes, trying his best to replicate her technique. But his best wasn't very good. He missed spots, used too much product in some places, not enough in others. Had to redo sinks twice because he left streaks. Sarah corrected him patiently but firmly, the way you'd teach a child who was genuinely trying but lacked the skill. Around midnight, they took a 15-minute break. The crew gathered in the 3rd floor break room, pulling out packed meals and drinks. Derek sat apart initially. Then Keisha called him over. "First night?" she asked, offering him a granola bar. "That obvious?" She smiled. "You've got the look, like you just discovered muscles you didn't know existed. That's exactly how I feel." Marcus joined them, a man in his 50s with gray threading through his hair. "Give it a week. Your body adjusts. Though those boots are going to destroy your feet before then. You need insoles, the gel kind." Derek looked down at his feet. "Yeah, they're already killing me." James, the youngest of the crew at maybe 25, handed Derek a pack of Band-Aids. "Bathroom's around the corner. Take care of those blisters now before they get worse. Trust me on this." The casual kindness seemed to surprise Derek. These were people he'd ignored for 3 years, now helping him through his first night doing their job. The irony wasn't lost on him. I could see it in his face. Sarah stood. "Break's over. We've still got 3rd floor bathrooms and the lobby." The second half of the shift was visibly harder for Derek. Exhaustion had set in, and every movement looked like it cost him something. But he kept going. Didn't complain, didn't ask for special treatment, just followed Sarah's instructions and did the work. At 6 a.m., as dawn started painting the eastern sky pink, the crew finished their checklist. They loaded carts, locked supply closets, and headed for the parking lot. Derek moved like a man 3 times his age, his shoulders slumped with fatigue. Sarah found me in the lobby. "He made it through. How'd he do?" "Terrible." She said it without malice, just stating facts. But he tried, listened to instructions, didn't whine. That's more than I expected from someone in his position. "Will he make it a month?" She considered that. "If he shows up tomorrow night, maybe. Most people quit after the first shift. The ones who come back at least have a chance. Derek emerged from the service elevator, looking like he'd survived a war. He spotted me and walked over, each step clearly painful. "I'm coming back tomorrow night, in case you were wondering." I wasn't wondering. I was curious. There's a difference. His laugh was bitter. Fair enough. He glanced back at the building. I used to think this job was easy, mindless, something anyone could do. But it's not. It requires skill and stamina and attention to detail that I didn't understand. Understanding is the first step. Respect is the second. I'm working on it. He pulled his car keys from his pocket. Rachel didn't come home last night. She's staying at her friend Jennifer's place. Says she needs time to think. That's her right. I know. He looked at me with exhausted, red-rimmed eyes. "Frank, I know sorry doesn't fix this. I know showing up for one shift doesn't undo 3 years of being an asshole. But I need you to know I'm going to keep showing up. Every night, you'll have me. Until I've proven I meant what I said. Words are wind. Actions are what count." "Then watch my actions." He drove away as the sun cleared the horizon, his silver Audi looking out of place in the parking lot among the older, more practical vehicles of the night crew. I sat in my truck watching the day shift arrive. Young professionals and business casual, clutching coffee cups, checking phones, heading into a building that had been made ready for them by people they'd never meet. Sarah tapped on my window. "You think he'll actually finish the month?" "Honestly, I don't know. But I know this. If he does, he'll be a different person. Better or worse, I can't say, but different. Then if he doesn't, then Rachel will have her answer about who she married." The city was waking up around us, traffic building on the streets, the temperature rising toward another perfect Phoenix day. And somewhere in Scottsdale, my daughter was trying to decide if her marriage was worth saving. I didn't envy her that choice, but I was glad she was finally making it with her eyes open instead of closed. That evening, I got a text from Marcus with a photo attached. Derek had shown up for night 2 wearing proper work boots with gel insoles and compression sleeves on both arms. The message read, "Your son-in-law came prepared. Kid might actually make it." I smiled and forwarded it to Rachel, without comment. Let her see for herself that Derek was following through. Let her make her own judgment about what that meant. She replied an hour later with a single word: "Thanks." It wasn't reconciliation, it wasn't forgiveness, but it was communication. And sometimes that's where healing had to start. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm of night shifts and strained silences. Derek showed up every evening at 9:45, worked his 8 hours, and left without fanfare. His hands developed calluses. His back grew stronger. The initial blisters healed into tougher skin. Sarah sent me weekly reports. He's improving. Still slow on the bathrooms, but his attention to detail is solid. Gru doesn't hate him anymore. That's progress. Rachel and I met for coffee on a Thursday afternoon, neutral territory at a cafe neither of us frequented. She looked tired, older somehow, like the past month had aged her in ways that went beyond calendar days. "He's different," she said, stirring sugar into her latte. "Comes home exhausted, barely talks, falls asleep by 8. I barely recognize him." Is different better or just different? She considered that. He apologized, really apologized, not the surface kind where you're just saying words. He told me everything he said about you, about Mom. Cried when he admitted how he's treated people. Actions matter more than tears, honey. I know. That's why I'm still at Jennifer's.
She looked at me directly. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you do this to save me or to punish him?" The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. "Both," I admitted. "Maybe more the second than the first." I was angry, hurt. I wanted him to feel what he made me feel. She nodded slowly. "At least you're honest about it." Your mother would have handled it better, would have confronted him directly, made her point without the public spectacle. But Maggie had a gift for cutting through nonsense that I never mastered. Mom would have terrified him into changing within 5 minutes. Rachel smiled despite herself. Remember when my 10th grade teacher said I wasn't college material? Mom had that woman apologizing before the meeting even ended. Your mother believed people could change if you gave them reason and opportunity. I'm not sure I have that same faith. Rachel reached across the table and took my hand. You gave Derek both. The reason was humiliation. The opportunity is those night shifts. Now we wait and see which one matters more to him. Thanksgiving arrived with the weight of unresolved tensions. Rachel called me the Tuesday before to extend an invitation. Derek's parents aren't coming. It'll just be us and the kids. Will you come? I wanted to say yes immediately. Wanted to pretend the past month hadn't happened and return to some version of normal. But normal had been built on foundations of disrespect and willful blindness. Is Derek ready to have me there? He asked me to invite you, said he wanted a chance to do it right this time. So I went. Drove to their Scottsdale house on Thursday afternoon with a bakery pie because I'd never mastered Maggie's crust recipe. Derek answered the door wearing an apron, flour dusting his forearms. Frank, he stepped aside. Thank you for coming. The formality felt strange, like we were strangers negotiating a peace treaty. Emma and Lucas broke the tension by racing to hug my legs, their excitement uncomplicated by adult complications. Grandpa! Emma pulled me toward the kitchen. Daddy's making turkey, and he keeps checking the thermometer like every 5 minutes. The kitchen smelled like sage and roasting meat, a proper Thanksgiving in progress. Derek pulled the bird from the oven with practiced care, checking the temperature one more time. 165, he announced. We're ready. We sat around their dining room, the same one where Derek had uninvited me 4 weeks earlier. But the atmosphere had shifted. Derek said grace with genuine humility, thanking not just for food, but for second chances and hard lessons. The meal itself was quiet. Emma chattered about school. Lucas demonstrated his new dinosaur knowledge. Rachel watched Derek and me like a referee waiting for the fight to resume. It was Derek who finally addressed the elephant in the room. Frank, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you changed behavior. I'm on week 3 of night shifts, and Sarah says I can stay on her crew permanently if I want to. I'm considering it. Maybe drop to part-time marketing, keep working nights, stay connected to the reality of what makes the company run. I set down my fork. That's between you and your career goals. Don't do it as penance. Do it because you believe the work matters. I do believe it matters. That's what the last 3 weeks taught me. He looked at Rachel. I married your daughter because I loved her, but I didn't respect where she came from, didn't respect the man who raised her or the values he taught her. I'm trying to fix that. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I need to know this isn't temporary, that you're not just performing until Dad forgives you and then reverting to who you were. Derek reached for her hand. I can't prove that with words, only with time and consistency. All I can tell you is that I see things differently now. When I walk past someone cleaning, I see Sarah, Marcus, Keisha, James. I see people doing essential work that I took for granted, and I'm ashamed of who I was. The conversation turned to lighter topics after that. Plans for Christmas, Emma's upcoming school play, Lucas's obsession with stegosauruses, normal family rhythms resuming tentatively. As I prepared to leave that evening, Derek walked me to my truck. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of desert sage and distant wood fires. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I know I burned that bridge pretty thoroughly, but I hope eventually we can build something new. Not son-in-law and father-in-law playing roles, but 2 men who respect each other. I looked at him in the porch light.
His face showed the exhaustion of physical labor, but something else too. Maybe humility. Maybe the beginning of wisdom. Keep showing up for those night shifts. Keep treating Sarah's crew like the professionals they are. Keep being honest with Rachel about who you're becoming. Do that, and we'll see what builds. He nodded. Fair enough. Driving home through North Phoenix, past the buildings where Derek now spent his nights, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. The chance that confrontation and consequence could lead to genuine transformation rather than just resentment. My phone buzzed at a red light, a text from Rachel with the photo of Derek loading the dishwasher while the kids did homework at the kitchen table. The message read, "He's trying, Dad. Really trying." I texted back, "I see it. Give it time." Because that's what change required. Not dramatic gestures or public revelations, but the slow accumulation of different choices. The daily decision to be better than yesterday. 3 months later, Derek completed his night shift commitment. Sarah threw him a small graduation of sorts, the crew presenting him with a customized name badge that read, "Derek Parker, Honorary Night Shift Member." He kept it on his desk at work, a reminder of lessons learned the hard way. Rachel moved back home. They started marriage counseling. Emma and Lucas began spending weekends with me again, and I taught them the things my father taught me about dignity, respect, and the value of honest work. Derek never became my closest friend. Some bridges once burned leave scars even after rebuilding.
But he became someone I could share a holiday table with. Someone who said thank you to service workers and taught his children that character mattered more than credentials. And on quiet evenings, when I sat in Maggie's chair with my bourbon and my memories, I'd think about the cost of that transformation. The public humiliation, the damaged relationships, the pain inflicted on everyone involved. Was it worth it? I still wasn't entirely sure. But I knew this much. Sometimes love meant holding people accountable rather than letting them remain comfortable in their cruelty. Sometimes being a father meant teaching hard lessons that left everyone changed. Maggie would have understood. She'd have done it differently, more efficiently, with less collateral damage, but she'd have done it because some things were worth fighting for. Dignity was one of them. And teaching the next generation that every person deserved respect, regardless of their job title, that was worth almost any cost. The whiskey tasted like hard-won peace, and outside my window, Phoenix sparkled with lights powered by buildings cleaned by people most would never see. But I saw them, and now, because of everything that had happened, Derek saw them too. That had to count for something. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.